it is time for the France 24 debate. It's perhaps not unprecedented, but it's highly unusual. Nafissatou Diallo, the alleged victim of the Dominique Strauss-Kahn case, granting interviews to two major media, ABC Television and Newsweek magazine, a stunning twist in a nation where the names of alleged sex crimes victims are kept out of the limelight, with the prosecution revealing inconsistencies in the testimony against the former boss of the IMF, and with lawyers for the hotel maid suing over one tabloid's allegations that she's even a prostitute.
God is my witness. I'm telling the truth from my heart. And God knows that.
Today, in the France 24 debate, Strauss-Kahn's accuser talks. And with us to talk about it from New York, the man who met Nafissatou Diallo, co-wrote that article for that cover story for Newsweek magazine, Christopher Dickey. Also with us in our Paris studios, two distinguished attorneys, criminal lawyer Martine Moscovici. She follows sex crimes issues and defends them as well. Also with us, a man who's spent the last 2 months probably explaining to Americans how French law works, or is it the other way around? I'm not sure.
Both ways.
Ron Soffer, lawyer at both the Paris and New York bars. With us as well, from the France 24 International Affairs Desk, Douglas Herbert, and from the Sunday Telegraph, a woman who's been following this story from the get-go, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. The France 24 debate, which you can follow on our Facebook page. A lot of you have been weighing in with comments on this one. And on Twitter, where our handle is @FrancoisF24. Now, whether she likes it or not, Nafissatou Diallo has become a household name in this country since May the 14th, the arrest of a man who was poised to become the possible frontrunner for French president, thrusting her into the limelight. Stateside, though, many are discovering her real name only today with the cover of Newsweek and the interview she granted to ABC's Good Morning America.
I was like, I'm so sorry. I turned my head. He came to me and grabbed my breast. No, you don't have to be sorry. I was like, stop this. But he won't say nothing. He keep pushing me to the hallway, back to the hallway, keep pushing me. I was so afraid.
Christopher Dickey, after meeting Nafissatou Diallo, does her story hold up?
Well, yes, internally. There are really no contradictions in her story. She tells it the same way every time she tells it. That's been the case since the day of the incident. People who are much more sophisticated about interviewing alleged victims of sex crimes than I am, the people in the Special Victims Squad of the New York Police Department, found her completely convincing. And certainly when I met her, she seemed to be genuine when she was talking about two things. When she was talking about the incident itself, but also when she was talking about her job as a maid in the Sofitel, which may not sound like a great thing to a lot of people, but clearly it was a profession in which she took considerable pride. It was also her way of getting out of Africa and into the United States and supporting her 15-year-old daughter. And when she talked about that, she talked about it the way maybe simple people do who are very attached to routine and to the dignity that a job gives them. And she was very much afraid that this crazy incident with this man, this naked man in this hotel room, was going to create a situation where she might lose her job. And that was the point of coercion, and I found that fairly convincing, yes.
Christopher, here's what you wrote in Newsweek. Occasionally, as Diallo talked, she wept, and there were moments when the tears seemed forced. Almost all questions about her past in West Africa were met with vague responses. In light of that, as you said there, when it came to the actual timeline of what happened, you say what she says hold up. As far as from what you gathered from what she said, how much had she been prepped, do you think, for meeting you?
Well, I think on certain kinds of things, those issues where she seemed forced, I think she was trying to deal with things she felt she wasn't supposed to talk about, things that touched on her immigration status here, for instance, in the United States. And I think she would begin to dissemble when those issues came up. I think that sometimes when she was talking about friends or acquaintances of hers who were fairly shady, I think she definitely didn't want to go there, didn't want to elaborate about them. But she did. She would talk, but there was this sense that you weren't getting the whole story. But that wasn't the case when we were talking about the events of May 14th.
And what were the circumstances in which you interviewed her?
We went to the office of her attorneys on Fifth Avenue here in New York, and she showed up. We had there were three of us doing the interview, and then one extra person who was taking notes, and then afterwards there was a photo shoot set up in the office there.
When you spoke to her coming out of it, did that in any way change your personal views? I know that you've done expose pieces, you've been back and forth from Paris to New York to work on this story. Did it change your perception of the case?
It answered several questions for me about the events of May 14th. It clarified a lot of things that I had wondered about. I really had wondered, for instance, about the question of coercion. How does a man of Strauss-Kahn's physical stature, a little out of shape, a little pudgy, kind of short, how does he physically intimidate a woman who is taller than I am and built has a fairly athletic build? And the answer to that, in the context of her story, is her fear that she would lose her job. She's a maid making $25 an hour, and he's a guy in a $3,000 a day suite. So even if she doesn't know who he is, she knows he's got a lot more pull in the world than she does. So I think that answered a lot. In terms of the little details of the sequence of events, the timeline, some questions have been raised about things she said or didn't say, about what she did, for instance, immediately after the incident. Did she go and clean another room? No, she didn't, in fact. And although, for some reason, the prosecutor, when he decided that he wasn't going to pursue the cases enthusiastically as he had been doing before, accused her of lying to the grand jury on that minor point about what she did immediately after. In fact, she had been telling the truth, and his information was wrong.
One final question before we let you go, because I know you got a busy agenda in New York, Christopher Dickey. Is this a winning strategy? Is this going to put the heat on the district attorney's office to maintain the pressure to keep the case going, or is this a desperation move on the part of Nafissatou Diallo and her attorneys?
Well, I think her attorneys are going to bring a civil action very soon against Strauss-Kahn, and that clearly is in their interest. That's where they get their money, as well as Nafissatou getting whatever she's going to get. I think their interest is in keeping the prosecution going, at least until they get that case underway. I don't think that the prosecutors, at the end of the day, will take this to court, because there is a critical problem with Nafissatou's background, and that is not just that she lied on her asylum application to come to the United States or to be legalized in the United States, but she specifically lied about a rape in Guinea. Now, she may well have been raped in Guinea, but the account that she gave was a fiction, and she talked about it so convincingly that she was able to cry, and she was to make other people cry when she was essentially recounting that lie. Now, if you know that, and you're the defense attorney, and she's on the stand, and you are cross-examining her, and you say you lied, you rehearsed your lie, you rehearsed your lies about a rape, then you say, didn't you do the same thing with Dominique Strauss-Kahn? And in the United States, the measure is, for conviction, is he has to be proved guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, just that detail is probably enough to create a reasonable doubt in the minds of a jury. And as we've seen recently in several high-profile cases in the United States, including at least one handled by this district attorney, everybody in the world can think that somebody is guilty, but if the jury has a reasonable doubt, there won't be a conviction. And that's almost certainly what would happen in this case with Strauss-Kahn.
All right, Christopher Dickey, many thanks for that. Your piece is the cover story of this week's Newsweek magazine. Thanks for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Douglas Herbert, the eye of we're in the middle of a huge media storm, unprecedented because it's such a high-profile figure. Christopher Dickey making the point, at the end of the day, it's 12 jurors that would make the final call.
Yeah, and what's interesting, obviously, it's incumbent. The prosecutor really can only bring this case if he or she believes that they have a fighting chance of winning it. So you might say, well, reasonable doubt. Why not bring the case anyway? Let the jury decide whether or not they think there's a reasonable doubt. At least let the case proceed. But the problem is this costs a lot of money. There's a case to be made. Prosecutors, it's a very big decision when they decide to bring a case like this to trial. And if the prosecutor really doesn't believe, and based on a lot of past experience, that this will hold up beyond that criterion of the reasonable doubt, then they really can't bring the case. And that's the problem here. It's that issue of American jurisprudence. That reasonable doubt clause is really what the sticking point in bringing this case has been so far.
Attorneys for Strauss-Kahn have reacted in a statement to the interviews granted by Nafissatou Diallo. Ms. Diallo is the first accuser in history to conduct a media campaign to persuade a prosecutor to pursue charges against a person from whom she wants money. Her lawyers know that her claim for money suffers a fatal blow when the criminal charges are dismissed, as they must be. Tit for tat, Diallo's attorney reacting. Kenneth Thompson, in a statement, says Strauss-Kahn's lawyer have conducted an unprecedented smear campaign against the victim of a violent sexual attack. We're dealing with a brutal sexual attack, a mountain of physical evidence, a victim who spoke out immediately, and numerous corroborating witnesses. Again, here we're talking, Ron Sofer, about for those who don't know the intricacies of U.S. law, there's the criminal case and the civil case, as Christopher Dickey was mentioning.
I think that by allowing or advising their client to do this interview, they've basically abandoned the hope of having a criminal trial, because if they thought for 1 minute that there would be a criminal trial, it is not a very good thing to allow their client to be interviewed and to give such details of the account, giving on a plate Dominique Strauss-Kahn's lawyers and private detectives more elements on which they can conduct an investigation. And also there is also the possibility that what she said to the press contradicts what she might have said to the grand jury, what she said to the prosecutor. One need not forget that unlike what happens in France, what you say if you lie to the prosecutor, you're committing a crime in the US, which is not the case in France. And the other major difference is that, as was said before, unlike what happens in France, we're not trying to find out what actually happened, but what is provable beyond reasonable doubt.
And why are her chances better in a civil suit than in a criminal suit?
Because in a civil suit, it's the preponderance of the evidence. All she has to do is prove that her version of the facts is more probable than that of Dominique Strauss-Kahn. And that is a major difference. It's not beyond reasonable doubt. All she has to prove is that it's more probable. And there is a precedent, a very famous precedent, and that's the O.J. Simpson, who was exonerated in the criminal case, but found responsible in the civil case, and was ordered to pay a lot of damages to the victim's parents.
Martine Moscovici, many people in France, I guess, think they know the U.S. justice system because they see so many crime shows on TV. Are you surprised by the way proceedings have unfolded, and with this latest twist of the alleged victim speaking out so publicly?
Well, nothing surprises me when there's the justice case, but in France the system is very different because the civil and the criminal case take place in the same time and in the same place. There's only one trial. So I'm a little surprised by what she's saying, because she used to say, I don't want to go to a civil case to earn money. I don't want to earn money. I just want the justice. But in fact, we see she wants to earn a lot of money. And what is very shocking for me, because in France, when a woman is raped, she only can get about 15,000 euros, not more, not more, which is a shame.
And Elisabeth Moutet, in this case, what we've also seen is again how everything has been thrown out into the limelight. Journalists have been even grappling with using the name of Nafissatou Diallo, the French journalists using it, the Americans and the British ones not using it. And here today, to see her speak, it's almost as if for the French journalists, it's not that surprising.
For the French journalists, it's not surprising. For the British journalists, it is incredibly surprising because in Britain, this would be completely illegal. The minute you've got a case being brought to trial, everybody associated with the case is sub judice and cannot make statements because it would influence the court. In France, the French...
So wait, explain how that works.
That works in that as long as you've got suspects and nobody has been charged, you can talk about a case. The minute the case is actually decided for by and is scheduled to go to have hearings in tribunal, and there's the assistant investigation going on, inquiry going on, that's over. You can't talk about it in the press.
So in other words, in the UK, it would be illegal, the interview that Nafissatou Diallo did.
All of this would be completely illegal.
What's interesting here, though, just to make the distinction with the United States, there's sort of a misunderstanding or a misperception often that the U.S. has the same law as in Britain, where you're not allowed to name an alleged rape suspect or the victim of an alleged sexual assault. In fact, in the vast majority of U.S. publications, it's a voluntary decision, and it's a decision that actually arose out of sort of the rise of the rape crisis centers back in the 1970s, when rape became very much more in the center of public consciousness. A lot more rape awareness about the issue of rape came into being. And a lot of editors at U.S. newspapers, television, radio stations made a decision at that time, not all of them, Francois, that it would be an extreme disincentive against those perhaps who were thinking of reporting a rape to come out and report if they knew that they were going to be outed in the media. And that's what has motivated a lot of editors to make this decision not to name it. But it's not a law in the U.S. You can name a suspected rape victim.
Which is better, Martine Moscovici? Is it right that already in France, Nafissatou Diallo is a household name?
Well, everyone knows her name in France.
Is that right? Or should the French have held off naming her?
Normally in France, they don't give the name of victims. They just put in the newspapers. They just put an initial. They don't name it. But there's nothing in the law which allows journalists to put the names or not. There's nothing about this. For us, it's not very important. What is very important for us is not to do like what they did in New York, like the pub walk, which is for us very shocking.
Where you show the Dominique Strauss-Kahn in handcuffs.
Yeah, we have what we call présomption d'innocence, where someone who is not guilty is supposed to be innocent, and he must be protected as an innocent.
All right, when we come back, we'll continue. We unfortunately have to take a quick break. Stay with us. The France 24 debate continues.
The road that links Karachi with Kabul is the essential link between the two cities and is used to transport most of NATO's logistical equipment. Every week, the road is also the scene of violent attacks by the Taliban on coalition convoys.